Tonight's video is a chapter taken from The Antiquity of the Holy Royal Arch by F.P. de Castells, first published in 1927. This is a fairly erudite and complex work. On a couple of occasions I have taken the liberty of editing out some sections that I believe may have revealed too much of our usages, customs and secrets, but apart from that, the text is presented exactly as written. On a number of occasions, he does make reference to the book, The Apocalypse of Freemasonry, which he also wrote. For those who are interested, a copy of that text has just been uploaded to the From the Quarries website. I hope you enjoy the video.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's presentation, From the Quarries, an archive of Masonic lore.
Astronomy is one of the liberal arts and sciences which the craftsmen are asked to study. It is the last and highest, and in the craft there is much about the subject. Thus, one of the spherical balls with which the twin pillars were ornamented is said to have had maps of the celestial sphere. It was in fact a planisphere. As we know, blue has always been the distinguishing colour of Freemasonry generally, and this is because blue points out the azure of the sky. On the 17th of March, 1731, the Grand Lodge of London ordered that the jewels of the Grand Master, his deputy, and wardens should be worn pendant to blue ribbons about their necks, and that this was to cure some irregularities, which phrase implied that blue had always been considered the proper colour. This accords with the fact that the arch of the vaulted shrine has its counterpart in the arch of heaven, the canopy of celestial blue above us. In the Apocalypse of Freemasonry, the writer has shown that the ideal of the Mason is always that of the sun at its meridian. And those who have read this book will remember how the Master Mason has to ascend the topmost chamber of the porch, there to behold the wonders of the midnight sky. In the grand panorama which unfolds itself before his eyes, he can study the last of the liberal arts and sciences, as he promised to do. Moreover, those who read that book saw how what astronomy reveals to the Master Mason will one day have to be supplemented with what he finds in the depths below. The gloominous luminary of nature regularly diffuses light and lustre to all within its circle. But, one day, when the same Master Mason comes to find himself in the right relation to the sun of his spirit, he will be able to perceive many things which before were dark and enigmatic, things that were but imperfectly discerned. It is the longing for this perfect illumination that makes him turn to the east in his appeals to the deity. In craft masonry, we hear of an astronomical circle called the border. Its astronomical character cannot be denied, because the initiate is distinctly told that it refers us to the planets which, in their revolutions, form a beautiful border or skirtwork around the sun. Really and truly, this border was once a zodiac, although we have almost lost sight of the fact. Nowadays, most people imagine the sun to be fixed and immovable, but in ancient times it was generally regarded as the typical traveller because of its apparent movement around the earth, and the zodiac gives us its itinerary in the course of a year. It may appear that the Royal Arch has little or nothing to do with the science of astronomy, but it has, and we shall presently see that the lost word is not so much a mystic name as an astronomical formula which has come down to us from ancient Babylon. The zodiac is still with us in the Royal Arch, although, like the border of the craftsman, and like so many other symbols of Freemasonry, its real import and significance has been obscured. Indeed, we would suggest a conundrum. Where is the zodiac? According to the old ritual, the companions formed a circle, sometimes a semicircle, around the emblematical lights of the sacred shrine. It was in that way that they symbolized the astronomical circle that is the border. And in former days too, in the background of the triple triangle, there used to be depicted a radiant sun, which, having been adopted as a symbol of craft masonry, came to be known as the blazing star, although even to the initiate we say plainly that he must not think of a star, but of the sun. In 1775, when the Freemasons' Hall was erected, the zodiac was acknowledged to be a Masonic symbol by placing it over the main entrance of that edifice. The Masons who erected that noble pile left their testimony on this point in the stone carvings which we see at present. But the references to the border contained in the ritual are much older than the Freemasons' Hall. Nowadays, it is still customary for the companions to range themselves round about the 12 ensigns. The etymology of the word ensign is in and signum, that is, something on which a sign has been inscribed. The 12 signs on our staves represent as many constellations in the midnight sky, and these signs were originally those of the zodiac, or substitutes for those of the zodiac. Those pictorial devices are now stated in our ritual to be the distinctive bearings of the 12 tribes of Israel, and to be figurative of the peculiar blessings bequeathed to each by the patriarch Jacob on his deathbed. Nothing is said of their being astronomical signs, but there is more in this than meets the eye at first glance. The zodiac originated in Babylon at a very remote age. It was in existence as early as 3000 BC. At that remote time, the starry heavens were divided into 3 regions, over which the 3 chief deities were said to preside. And each month of the year, that is, each division of the zodiac, had also its patron deity. One writer says that the region over which Anu, the first of the 3 chief gods, presided, included the 4 signs Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo. That belonging to Bel, the second of those gods, included Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, and that of Ea, the third god, had the remainder, Capricornus, Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries. But Professor Hommel's view is that the domains of Anu, Bel, and Ea correspond to the thirds of the ecliptic, this ecliptic being the path of the sun through the zodiac. According to him, the region ruled by Anu comprised 3 signs, from Taurus to Cancer inclusive, that under the influence of Bel, 4 signs, from Leo to Scorpio, and that subject to Ea, 5 signs, from Sagittarius to Aries. This would have the effect of distributing the 12 signs thus: 3 to Anu, 4 to Bel, and 5 to Ea, which is, of course, reminiscent of the Pythagorean triangle. Diodorus Siculus, in his account of the Babylonian astronomy, tells us that the rulers of the gods were 12 in number, to each of whom was allotted a month with one of the signs of the zodiac. This prompted Gunkel to make the following comment: "There must be a line leading from the 12 Babylonian zodiac gods to the 12 tribes of Israel, but of what nature or how long the line is cannot at present be said." It is an unquestionable fact that in Babylon the planisphere was divided into 3 separate regions, over which the 3 principal deities of the Babylonian pantheon presided. The result was something like this. And it is most probable that the mystic sign called Triskelion, which takes the form of a Y, arose from that way of dividing the celestial sphere into 3 regions. If so, we should have to say that the Triskelion has a reference to the heavens in revolution, as the craftsmen say of the border or zodiac. The Isle of Man has adopted the Triskelion and placed it on its coat of arms, but in that case the 3 limbs of the symbol have become 3 human legs, which are supposed to be in motion, as the legs of a traveller are. The conception of 3 celestial regions presided over by 3 deities was reflected in the views of the Kabbalists, who also acknowledged the three principal powers or energies of the first three Sephiroth as paramount personalities in the universe. Accordingly, they represented these three as pillars or supports, and they originated our symbol of the three triangles enclosed in a circle, this later representing En Sof, the boundless one or absolute deity. We now justify the use of the circle as a symbol of deity by saying that, as the circle is without beginning or end, it may justly be deemed a type of God. And that was also the view which the Kabbalists took of it. But at one time, the Royal Archmason used to say of the circle that it was a symbol of God because its centre was everywhere and its circumference nowhere. Historically, and also metaphysically, the secrets of the Royal Arch have reference to a centre, for they are to be found in a subterranean place of the second or sacred lodge which is centrally situated. The Fellowcrafts say in the centre of the building without knowing what it means. The exact location is to be determined by certain landmarks on its surface, for, first of all, we have to ascertain where the first temple formerly stood, and then the very centre of the ground on which the sanctuary was afterwards erected. Having obtained these data, following this clue, we come to the crown of the vault, and soon after discover that which was lost. As Master Masons, we said that we hoped to find it with the centre, but the expression was not clear. We did not know it meant guided by a certain centre and taking our bearings from it. But at last the spot was found, and it was then that we discovered the secret of the three. That is, not merely the record of the Grand Masters who presided at the building of King Solomon's temple, but the mystery of the creation of the universe and the triune essence of the deity. We shall presently deal with the names of the deities who presided over the three regions, Anu, Bel, and Ea, and we shall then see that they are no strangers to the chapter, although they are given out in such a way that they have hitherto been unrecognized, and these names will be found to have an astronomized import. In the volume of the Sacred Law, only 4 of the banners of the tribes of Israel are expressly referred to, viz., the leading standards of the 4 divisions of the army of Israel, which were the banners corresponding to Judah, Reuben, Ephraim, and Dan. These 4 had their places assigned to them at the east, west, north, and south of the camp. The Jerusalem Targum says that they were made of silk of 3 colours, and that they had a device upon them under the form of a lion, a stag, a man, and a cerastes, or horned viper. These devices are still recognizable in those we mention in the chapter. The stag was meant for Taurus, the ox. The man was Aquarius. The cerastes seems to have been the traditional sign for the bright star Sirius in the constellation Scorpio, which is called in Arabic al-Hay, which means the reptile. But the cerastes was replaced by an eagle, because the eagle was supposed to have vanquished the reptile, the viper. The lion was Leo, the lion of the tribe of Judah. Every tribe, however, had its own standard, but it is now difficult to identify the devices of the various tribes as signs of the zodiac, because they are not expressly named and writers differ in their statements. The Jewish Encyclopedia has the following observations. The 12 constellations represent the 12 tribes. The standards correspond to the zodiacal signs of the constellations, so that in the east was the standard of Judah, with Issachar and Zebulun beside it, these 3 being opposite Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. In the south was the standard of Reuben, with Simeon and Gad opposite Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. In the west was the standard of Ephraim, with Manassas and Benjamin, opposite Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. And in the north was the standard of Dan, with Asher and Naphtali, opposite Capricornus, Aquarius, and Pisces. In Jacob's blessing, there seems to be an allusion to these signs, as if he had a mental picture before him while he spoke, but these allusions do not always tally with the distribution usually made. Levi, not going into battle, would have no standard at all, and therefore no sign. But possibly Simeon was coupled with Levi as the twins, Gemini, for we read, "Simeon and Levi are brethren." It proceeds thus: "Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations," and we know that Gog and Magog, a representation of Gemini, held a spear and a club in their hands. Judah is well described as a lion's whelp, suggesting Leo, the lion. Zebulun shall be a haven of ships, suggesting Cancer, the crab. Dan was to be an adder or whipsnake in the path that biteth at horses' feet, a fit allusion to Scorpio, and we have already mentioned that the Targum speaks of a cerastes, which afterwards was changed for an eagle. As to Gad, a troop shall press upon him, but he shall press upon their heel. That is, he will show fight like Sagittarius. Joseph is represented by Manasseh, a fruitful bough by a fountain, the purity of the water at the spring suggesting Virgo. Benjamin is a wolf that raveneth, that is, Aries, the ram. The usual order in which we now name the signs of the zodiac is this: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricornus, Aquarius, and Pisces. Aries was considered to open the spring about the 21st of March, but in the camp of the Israelites, Aries would seem to have had his place in the southwest. We submit the following diagram as giving the most probable distribution of the signs among the tribes. The leading standards are referred to by Ezekiel when he describes the vision he had of the 4 living creatures. These presented the human form, but their faces were different. One had that of a man, another that of a lion, another that of a bull, and another that of an eagle. They symbolize intelligence, royal dignity and power, patient strength, and exalted vision and celerity in flight. These living creatures stood facing inwards towards the centre, that is to say, towards the sanctuary or shrine. Scholars often note correspondences between Freemasonry and the ancient religions. We cannot follow them in that direction, but it is remarkable that in Mithraism, the first 4 of its 7 degrees had names in Greek and Latin, which suggest these same living creatures or devices on the 4 leading standards of the chapter, while the quarters of the globe with which they are associated is also in accord with the practice of Israel. Their names were Corax, Griphius, Miles, and Leo. The ground plan of the temple was a parallelogram, and the middle chamber presented the form of a parallelepipedon, or double cube, and in the Royal Arch chapter the ensigns are also arranged so as to suggest those things. The Sanctum Sanctorum was at the furthest end of a long building. The idea of the astronomical circle or zodiac is reflected by the mystic word Abraxas, once used in the ceremonies but now corrupted, we think, into ABH, which in the ritual is said to signify the soul of nature. The ending oth is the Hebrew plural, but we have not been able to identify the word with anything in the Hebrew language. Abraxas is a made-up word, which consists of 7 letters. Taking the numerical value of those letters in Greek will be found to yield the formula of the solar year, thus: 1 plus 2 plus 100 plus 1 plus 60 plus 1 plus 200 equals 365. Accordingly, This word was a cryptogram, which, like the zodiac, was intended to convey the idea of the sun moving among the planets, performing its annual journey or circumambulation of the heavens, from constellation to constellation, from sign to sign. It was in that way that the glorious luminary suggested some of the ordeals which the craft mason has to go through in the degrees of probation before he is admitted into the Royal Arch. In the first tracing board used in the craft, there appear 7 stars, which are said to have an allusion to the 7 masons of the perfect lodge. And in the Apocalypse of Freemasonry, the writer has already shown how well this idea of a perfect lodge fits in with the case of the constellation Ursa Minor, on account of both its composition and its movement. For there we see 7 stars describing a circle, Polaris at the extremity becoming therefore the master star around which the whole of the heavens revolve. It marks the centre of the planisphere. And there is the second constellation, Ursa Major, which gives us the idea of emulation, by its similarity of form and regularity of motion. For with Masons, emulation has always been understood to be the essence of perfect obedience to a central power. Now, adding together these 2 constellations, we get a total of 14 stars, which tallies with an important feature of the Royal Arch, that is, the 14 pillars or supports of the vaulted chamber, 2 of exquisite design and workmanship, and 12 of equal symmetry and beauty. It also tallies with the 14 letters which originally appeared within the secret vault. This wonderful correspondence of astronomical ideas with our letters, words, numbers, emblems, and architectural ornaments show plainly what intense students of nature our ancient brethren must have been.
For more Masonic podcasts, videos, music, texts, and artwork, visit fromthequarries.com or subscribe to our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook accounts by searching From the Quarries.